revising or anything like that. It's 9 members. I know that when we initially did it in 77, there were 9 members. So if you're saying between 7 and 11, 9 sounds like a good number in between then. So.
Sure. And then we could add a couple of alternates. So if someone drops out, then you've got somebody else who's willing to step in behind. And I think we probably have, if I didn't count exactly, but I think we have about 20 applicants.
15, I think. Yeah. They had, I had the office look, they had 9 in 89 and they had 8 in 99 on the committee. Strange number, but.
Well, maybe we could put it on the agenda for next week, Mr. Chairman, and we could do a round-robin voting. I'll pick our top 11 and see how that comes out, or something like that. Similar to the way we did the candidates for the...
I would like to know how the board feels about having at least one member of the board on the committee. I know that if they report to us that we're not permitted, but this committee does not report to us. They report to
town meeting.
Town meeting. So with clarification, and I think we should get clarification, if in fact the distinction is whether they report to us or not, then I would think that it would make sense to have, I can't do it, but one of our members do it, if in fact it's permissible under the guidelines.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that you know, some people they could see it either way, but I know one way you can look at it is that we're involved with the charter all the time, and if there's any disputes or issues, it would be helpful to have someone that's been on at least one side of the dispute talk about the issue, as opposed to a group of people maybe looking at a section that don't really understand the history of why there's been.
Well,
we've had issues with town meeting, we've had issues with appointments and sections of that charter that you obviously always want to get both sides, but it's always good to have someone there that at least can give some history to why some of these things have come up.
Well, history, and also you're correct. We work with and live with the charter. I hesitate to use the expression day to day. But we do live with it. It's our enabling document. It's our Bible, so to speak. It's our marching orders, and I think it's imperative to have that perspective on that board when people are asking how would this impact or affect, or what would be the potential ramifications of this particular change, or maybe re-amending or completely eliminating a component of the charter. I just think that an experienced person on this board would lend valuable insight into that.
No, and I think you're right, and especially where we have had issues, even as far as, how does this affect this, or, the correlation between things, the definition of things, stuff like that, and it really is interpretation, and I know that there have been plenty of issues that I know I've said, I kind of like, I don't care which way it is as long as the rules, as long as the procedure's done the right way or whatever, and maybe to show where those gray areas have been in issues, so that whichever way there's a decision made of what a definition is or what a procedure is, it's fine as long as it's clear, so that anyone going forward would be able to understand it.
And as far as the criticism, there's a certain element that will criticize us for whatever we do, one way or the other. I'm pretty much immune to it by this point. So I don't think that there's anything that could happen in an open public meeting that could be construed as unfair or deceptive by any member of the board, and therefore, notwithstanding an eyebrow being raised, I think that it makes perfect sense. Otherwise, we are sitting at the town meeting, debating as members of the board the merits of any charter changes without having had any real prior input. And I think that not limiting debate is the goal, but clarification of the document is the goal.
And I was, if I can use you, and then you can step in. I was there, Selectman Donahue had told me recently about a meeting that she had attended, that an issue came up about the charter, and someone got up and said, well, that's not what they intended. You know, that isn't what the intent was. And it was like, okay, well, like, you can't be a mind reader. So for that, reason, I'm sorry, go ahead,
No,
Jane.
that's okay. I'm in favor of that concept of having a member of the Board of Selectmen as a member of the Charter Review Committee. I'm also in favor of the concept of having some ad hoc members that can't vote, that aren't actually on the Charter Committee, but who could serve as advisors for somewhat the same reason,
Well,
because they are involved.
The town administrator.
The town
would be a good-
administrator is
yeah.
one. Obviously, he has a huge role. Our interviewee just pointed out very adequately that, and I think accurately, that, there's a lot of discussion to be had about that concerns the responsibilities of both the town administrator in this form of government and the Board of Selectmen, and where those lines of responsibility overlap, intersect, or whatever. I also recently had a conversation with a member of the Finance Committee. The whole budget review process and the whole budget process, which I personally feel is totally broken and needs to be fixed, and is reflective of 30 years ago, when the budget was done totally different on the state level. Unfortunately, the Finance Committee members could not be voting members because the charter says and the bylaw says they can't serve on any other committee. But they would be another example of somebody who might be a subject matter expert, if you will, in terms of how the charter functions or dysfunctions in the areas that they themselves are concerned with. So I'd like the board to think about that as well.
Well,
All
I
right.
think that's in the last Charter Review Committee, I think that's what they did, is they brought in different people for that, so. But you're right, we could
But
have
I'd like
ones-
to make
the-
more,
the
I'd like to
stronger
make
ones.
it not necessarily, and I know that, a good charter review committee, of course, would hopefully bring in anybody who has a role in the charter, but for more, not just a
Right, that's what I
subject
mean, for
matter
those
expert.
core ones.
Right.
Yeah.
More of a continuous role than just as an ad hoc but non-voting member.
Right.
And I'm not sure what the legislation says about voting members versus non-voting members and numbers, but we can check that out between now and next
Okay.
week and
Definitely.
come back with it. So those are just a couple of things that I would like the board to consider when we're finalizing our composition of this Charter Review Committee.
Okay.
In search of projects where state assistance will result in construction. Over the months, they have considered hundreds of proposals